in the world, written by a man named Alfred Noyes. The story is called The Highwayman. It's a classic. Now, Mark Twain says that classics are books that everybody talks about, but no one's ever read. My dad used to read this to me when I was a kid in the rocking chair. And I'm not exactly sure why, because it's kind of a creepy story. But I think it was because he loved the rhythms. My dad was a poet as well as being an electronic salesman. Yeah, he had a pile of rejection slips for his poetry. He had submitted them all his life, which was cool. Because, you know, we're artists because we can't not be artists. And I was lucky that he decided that he'd support us instead of trying to be an artist. So, let's not talk to my wife about this. So, this story is amazing. It takes place in the late 1700s. So, in the story, so it's got all that working for it. It takes place in England. And in the story, the main character is the highwayman. He's a robber. He steals from the rich and keeps for himself. It's very simple. And they describe him as having a French cocked hat, a tri-cornered hat, and lace at his chin, and a coat of claret velvet, of wine-colored velvet. So he's looking good. Now he's in love with Bess, the landlord's daughter, the landlord's black-eyed daughter. Oh, baby. And also in the story, there are the redcoats, King George's men. They're part of the bad guys. But also in the story is a character called the ostler. Now, an ostler, it's an archaic word. It's a person who works at an inn or a hotel. Because the word ostler comes from hostler, comes from hostel, comes from host, hotel, that kind of thing. Because you know in England they drop the H's anyway. Cool, blind, we'll figure that out. Hey, off to hospital we go. Aye, cool, blind. So anyway, I love this story. So come with me away from here. Back through time. Across England. We see the low rolling hills and the road, and there's the inn. There's the moon. This is The Highwayman by Alfred Noyes. It has the wind in it too, because I love the wind. Because I'm full of it. The wind. The wind was a torrent of darkness among the gusty trees. The moon was a ghostly galleon tossed upon cloudy seas. The road was a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor, and the highwayman came riding, riding, riding. The highwayman came riding up to the old inn door. He had a French cocked hat on his forehead, a bunch of lace in his chin, a coat of claret velvet, and breeches of brown doeskin. They fitted with nary a wrinkle. His boots were up to the thigh, and he rode with a jeweled twinkle. His pistol butts a twinkle, his rapier hilt a twinkle, under the jeweled sky. Over the cobbles he clattered and clanged in the dark inn yard, and he tapped with his whip on the shutters, but all was locked and barred. Then he whistled a tune to the window. And who should be waiting there but the landlord's black-eyed daughter, Bess, the landlord's daughter, plaiting a dark red love knot into her long black hair. And dark in the dark old inn yard, a stable wicket creaked. Where Tim, the ostler, listened. His face was white and peaked. His eyes were hollows of madness. His hair like mouldy hay. For he loved the landlord's daughter. The landlord's red-lipped daughter. Dumb as a dog he listened, as he heard the robber say, "One kiss me, bonny sweetheart. I'm after the praise tonight, but I shall be home with the yellow gold afar in the morning light. Yet, if they tear me sharply and hear me through the day, watch for me by moonlight. Look for me by moonlight. I'll come to thee by moonlight, though hell should bar the way. He rose upright in his stirrups. He scarce could reach her hand, but she loosened her hair in the casement, and his face burned like a brand as the black cascade of perfume came tumbling over his breast, and he kissed its waves in the moonlight. Sweet black waves in the moonlight. Then he turned his horse in the moonlight and galloped away to the west. Now, he did not come in the dawn. He did not come in the noon. But out of the tawny sunset, before the rise of the moon, when the road was a gypsy's ribbon, looping the purple moor, the redcoat troops came marching, marching, marching. King George's men came marching up to the old inn door. They spoke no word to the landlord. They drank his ale instead. And they gagged his daughter and bound her to the foot of her narrow bed. Two of them knelt at her casement. With muskets at their side there was death at every window, and hell at one dark window, for Bess could see through her casement the road that he would ride. They tied her up to attention with many a sniggering jest. And they bound a musket beside her with its barrel beneath her breast. Now, keep good watch. And they kissed her. And she heard the doom man say, watch for me by moonlight. Look for me by moonlight. I'll come to thee by moonlight, though hell should bar the way. She twisted her hands behind her, but all the knots held good. She writhed her hands till her fingers were wet with sweat or blood. She stretched and strained in the darkness. The hours crawled by like years, till now, on the stroke of midnight, cold on the stroke of midnight, the tip of one finger touched it. The trigger, at least, was hers. The tip of one finger touched it. She strove no more for the rest. Up, she stood to attention, with the barrel beneath her breast. She would not miss their hearing. She would not strive again, for the road lay bare in the moonlight, blank and bare in the moonlight. And the blood of her veins in the moonlight throbbed to her love's refrain. Had they heard it? Those horse hoofs ringing clear. In the distance were they deaf that they did not hear, down the ribbon of moonlight? Nay, over the brow of the hill? No, the highwaymen came riding, riding, riding. The redcoats looked to their priming. She stood up straight and still. In the frosty silence, in the echoing night, near he came and nearer. Her face shone like a light. Her eyes grew wide for a moment. She took one last deep breath, and her finger moved in the moonlight. The musket shattered the moonlight, shattered her breast in the moonlight, and warned him with her death. He turned, he spurred to the west. He did not know who stood, bowed with her head on the musket, drenched in her own red blood. Not till the dawn did he hear it. Aye? And his face grew grey to hear how Bess, the landlord's daughter? Nay, nay, the landlord's black-eyed daughter had watched for her love in the moonlight and died in the darkness there. Back he spurred like a madman, shrieking a curse to the sky, with the white road smoking behind him, and his rapier brandished high. Blood red were his spurs in the golden noon, wine red was his velvet coat, when they shot him down in the highway. Down like a dog in the highway. And he lay in his blood on the highway, with a bunch of lace at his throat. But still, on a winter's night, they say, when the wind is in the trees and the moon is a ghostly galleon tossed upon cloudy seas, when the road is a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor, a highwayman comes riding, riding, riding. A highwayman comes riding up to the old inn door. Over the cobbles he clatters and clangs in the darkened yard. And he taps with his whip on the shutters, but all is locked and barred. Then he whistles a tune to the window. And who should be waiting there but the landlord's black-eyed daughter, Baz, the landlord's daughter, plaiting a dark red love knot into her long black